Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the bottom 10 tech tree tanks in Cold War series. Now I did one of these not too long ago on the TR series of tanks in Era 2. We're now back in Era 3 and the the Chinese trend is back. We are in the Type 85-2M. Now I say the trend continues with the Chinese tanks because once again we are looking at a Chinese tank, and this one is sort of surprising to me, and I'll explain why. But before I get into the details of this tank, I'm just going to set the scene a little bit because this tank has competition. This is Tier 1 of Era 3, so this is the introduction to Era 3 for the Chinese heavies. It's not that bad. In my opinion, this tank isn't that bad. This is one of those tanks where you play it and you feel like, well, to me at least, this feels nostalgic in a way. It feels reminiscent of a time gone by when the game was once something else. And it's kind of... it feels quite refreshing to play this tank because it's not fast, the reload isn't that quick compared to what's around it, the armour feels pretty good, and that gives me stereotypical World of Tanks heavy vibes. You know, the classic heavy tank feel. That's what I'm getting from this tank. So that's how it feels to me. But, and there is a but with this thing, there's more to it, and there's a demonstration of the armour there holding up very well. This tank, I think, has fallen foul of the way that this game has just progressed. So let's take a look at what its competition is. So this is an Eastern Alliance heavy. That means its competition at the moment is the T-72B and the Type 80BV. So we'll just take a speed comparison, for example. So top speed of the Type 85-2M is, and this is fully unlocked as well, not stock, fully unlocked, 65 kilometers an hour. T-72B, fully unlocked, 67. T-80BV, 74. Now we'll go over to the Western Alliance. M1 Abrams, 72 kilometers an hour. Leopard 2, 76 kilometers an hour. So we have a mid to low 70s average-ish speed for the introduction of heavies into Era 3. And then we have the Type 85-2M all the way down near enough 10 kilometers an hour slower than everything else. This tank is slow in comparison to what's around it, and that is why I say it's kind of been surpassed by the progression of the game, because the game is, well, the game is pretty quick. Era 3 is not slow, and this tank, by World War II standards, this tank is not slow at all, but by Era 3 standards, this thing is like, you're gonna notice it, you're gonna feel it, especially when you're climbing up a hill. You're going to notice that it's a lot slower when other tanks like the M1, for example, will just power straight up the hill. But that's exactly where the old school vibes come in, because you end up feeling like, oh, I'm actually playing a heavy here. This is reminiscent of the old days, and it's quite nice. I know that nostalgia only lasts so long, and you can't use that to justify and say, oh, this tank is amazing. This tank is not amazing, but it's also not terrible. The penetration on its gold rounds, 643 millimeters of penetration, which is, that's good enough for what needs to be done. T-72B, 697, that's a lot. Again, same for the T-80BV, 697. M1 Abrams, 583. Leopard 2, 710. So Leopard 2 there taking the top spot, but the gun performance is, it's okay. I've not had any trouble with this. The one thing, though, that has really made me enjoy playing this thing is the armor. And I do feel that because the Chinese line up until Era 3 is, how can I put this? It's not bad. We've covered, well, in this series, we've covered most of it at this point, or some of it. They're not bad, but they're not stellar. They're not ones that you immediately go, oh, yes, I love the Chinese line of tanks in Cold War. You don't see them very often. You don't really play against them or play them very often, and you can tell because most of them are on the bottom 10 list. But the armor of this tank has really surprised me. I've been bouncing ATGMs. I've been trying to play it hull down. The hull does seem to get penetrated more so, but then that is a typical point for people to shoot at. That is typically the weak point on tanks in this game anyway. But I've really noticed the armor on this thing is, I've come away from it thinking, you know what, that's not bad. This tank doesn't feel that bad. And if you're after that nostalgic old school World of Tanks heavy feel, I think the Type 85 2M has got you covered on that one. I really think it does. I'm never going to say, yeah, this is definitely one of the best tier 1 era 3 tanks. I mean, I think the M1 Abrams, I 3 marked that. I like that tank. I love that tank. I think that is a stellar tank. That really is very, very good. It's superb in my opinion. For its tier, it's amazing. Type 85 2M, it's not amazing, but at the same time, it does, for me anyway, it hits that spot of this does feel quite good. Not for long stretches of time, you know, play 4 or 5 games in it, but you'll come away feeling like, oh yeah, that felt like the traditional heavy experience. I liked that, or at least that's how it is for me. So this is number 5 on the bottom 10 list. Does it deserve to be bottom 5? I don't think it does. I think the Chinese line on the whole does need some love, because there are some doozies in there, but on the whole, I'd say most of them are better than people give them credit, and I do think that's reflected in the fact that, well, they're in the bottom 10 tanks. So there you go, 6,789 damage. Not an amazing game, but it's one of those games where it's like, yeah, that felt good. I liked that. I really enjoyed that. That was fun. That was enjoyable. I'm not rushing around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm kind of playing tactically at the back. My heavy armor works. My gun hits quite hard. The reload is okay. Accuracy is not super laser accurate, but it's good enough. It just hits that spot of, this is a traditional heavy. And if that's what you're after in this game, then I would recommend the Type 85 2M. Alright guys, that's all I've got for this video. If you've enjoyed it, please leave it a like, if not a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.